Sunsoft, what are you doing? The box and the cartridge clearly say that it's Afterburner, but the title screen says Afterburner 2. Well, I'm going to let you know a little secret. Afterburner 1 and 2 are effectively the same game. In terms of what you get on the screen, the difference is a changed HUD, being given some additional missiles to start with, and a few very minor changes to graphics. Afterburner 2 also lets you control the plane's thrust, which doesn't actually do a whole lot. The real reason that there is an Afterburner 1 and 2 is that Sega needed to make some significant changes so that they could have a moving cabinet for Afterburner. And I'm going to tell you up front, Afterburner is my least favorite of the Super Scalar arcade games. Afterburner is what you get if you strip Space Harrier of all its personality, and then make it even harder to dodge things. This Famicom port is Sunsoft's final collaboration with Sega. We're not quite done with Sega on the Famicom, but their biggest partner on the system is now looking at doing other things. That did result in something extra strange. Sunsoft was publishing their own games in the US at this point, but they couldn't publish Afterburner there due to Nintendo's illegal policy of not allowing games to be published on the NES if they were published on other systems. And I used illegal there because a court actually ruled that it was illegal. So while Sunsoft couldn't publish it themselves, they could hand it off to a company that was publishing unlicensed Nintendo games. Afterburner puts you into the seat of an F-14 Tomcat, and you have to shoot your way through 18 waves of enemies. Holding down the A button fires your gun, while the B button fires missiles. Missiles can lock on, but you have a limited number of them. The general rule is you use the gun for the targets coming at you from behind, while you lock on and fire missiles at people coming at you from the front. The other planes will fire missiles at you, and you have to dodge those. That's assuming that you can even see the missile before it hits you. As I mentioned before, one of the big changes in Afterburner 2 was that it featured thrust. But you have no control over the thrust in the Famicom version. So this really is a port of Afterburner 1 rather than 2, despite what the title screen says. Every odd-numbered stage after the first one refills your missiles a bit, and the only way that you can know how many missiles you have is to hit select and pause the game. If you're not mashing the B button wildly, you're probably not going to have a problem. What will give you a problem is the barrel roll. While you're spinning your plane, you don't have any control over your movement, and that spin takes a long time to complete. Another plane's missile can be launched and hit you in the time it takes you to do a barrel roll. You initiate a barrel roll by pressing in one direction, then tapping in the opposite direction, then pressing in the original direction again. A set of inputs that definitely won't occur by accident in a game where you are dodging left and right constantly. And dodging missiles is hard, maybe harder than it's supposed to be. Technically, it is possible to shoot down a missile with your guns. I would not want to try to rely on that though. You're better off moving consistently in one direction while the missile is fired, and then when it's about halfway to you, change direction. I also found that it was easier to dodge missiles using vertical movement rather than horizontal movement. When you get a game over, if you want to continue, you have to input a code. And it's not simple to do. In fact, I failed it multiple times due to some bad directions available online. The real continue code is to wait until you're back at the title screen, then press B 7 times, A 7 times, and up 6 times. There's no feedback to let you know that you've done it correctly. You just find out when you press start. If you do any input before or after that code, or if it dropped an input for some reason, then you're back at the beginning. Once you're past the gimmick of flying the jet at high speed, which this Famicom port does not replicate, I always found Afterburner to be a bit trivial. There's no variation in the enemies or stages, there's no bosses, no power-ups. It's closer to Space Invaders and Galaga than any kind of shooter that was happening at the time. Except those early arcade games worked within their limitations, while Afterburner's controls and poor graphic design result in something a lot more frustrating to play. And that frame rate is so bad, I was debating whether or not this one needed a photosensitivity warning. I didn't add one because there weren't high contrast flashing fields. but just because the game's unlikely to give someone a seizure doesn't mean that it's comfortable to look at. Fortunately for me, this is the last time that anyone attempts to port a super scalar game to the Famicom. We won't be seeing Outrun or Galaxy Force. Afterburner on the Famicom is virtually unplayable. And even if it was a good port, I'm not sure that the game would have been worth it anyways.